Hi guys, welcome to ProtoPilot, Darren here. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at the integration between Useberry and ProtoPie. So in case you haven't heard of Useberry, it's a platform which enables you to do remote usability testing. Everything from doing card sorting, to running surveys, to obviously testing your prototypes, which is what we're going to be focusing on. So we're going to look at the different ways you can set up your tests with Useberry, and I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks on how to structure your prototypes to get the best integration with Useberry's features. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I've logged into my Useberry account, and here in my workspace is where I manage and create projects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project. So when you create a new project, you get access to a number of templates. The test approaches that we'll explore today are single task, multiple tasks, and open analytics. So let's start with a single task template. Okay, so before we commit to this template, we can see what blocks are included and some typical usages, as well as the apps that we can work with. Okay, so we're going to select Use Template. Once we've selected a template, we are dropped into the Create section, and this is where we construct our test. In Useberry, we build our test using blocks. The single task template has already added some blocks for us over here on the left-hand side. And what we can do here is we can add more blocks by just tapping the add block down the bottom here. This shows us all the blocks that Useberry gives us. And we can also tap these plus buttons to get to the available blocks as well. And when you tap one of these plus buttons, you're going to insert whatever block you select into the position just underneath the button where you've tapped. So we're going to start customizing things. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to delete the welcome screen. I'm going to add a different kind of intro screen to this test. So I'm just going to delete this. And instead, I'm going to hit my plus button here. I'm going to add a context screen. Okay. I'm going to move my context screen above the single task because I want this context screen to act as the introduction. And I'm going to select the context screen and I'm going to type some text in here. So I'm just going to type instructions in the title. And for the context, I've just got some pre-prepared text. I'm just going to grab, paste that in here. You can see over on the right-hand side, this is a preview of what the user, the participant, is going to see when they come to this screen. And you can also see there's some other options here. I can upload an image. Maybe you want to show them an image of your prototype or of your app. We won't get into logical jumps in this particular video, but we'll probably look at that in some future videos. Okay. Next, we're going to go into single task. I'm going to tap that. And this is where we add our prototype. Okay, so I'm going to tap add prototype. And when we tap add prototype, we get taken to this screen and you can see I've got some prototypes I've already added to Useberry in the past. So once you've added a URL, you have that prototype in a library effectively. But this time around, I'm going to tap the new prototype button. And once I've tapped the new prototype button, you can see all of the integrations for all of the tools that Useberry can use. And we are obviously interested in ProtoPie, so we're going to choose the ProtoPie option. And you can see here that we've now got a set of instructions of how to add our ProtoPie prototype to Useberry. Okay. So what we need to do, as it says here, we need to go over to ProtoPie Cloud to get a URL link of our prototype. So I'm just going to skip over to one of my pre-prepared prototypes here. So what we just need to make sure before we copy the URL, we need to go into Access Settings. And we need to make sure that anyone with the link can view the prototype. Okay, we don't have to worry about the can download because Useberry is not going to allow users to download the prototype and won't need to download it itself, but it does need viewing access for it to run inside of Useberry. Okay, so we're just going to click Save. And we're going to come over to our SharePie. And here you can customize this to whatever you would normally do. I'm just going to leave all these switches on and I'm just going to copy the link. Okay, we're going to go back to the Useberry dashboard. And we just need to paste our link into this URL field here. So I'm just going to do a Command V and we're going to tap the import button. Okay, so Useberry will now import our prototype. Okay, it's just going to load it up here. So you can see the loading dots. And we can see over here, the name of our prototype is being displayed. Cool, so you can see now our prototype is loaded on the right hand side. Again, this is the preview window, the right hand side. Okay, cool. So Useberry's already picked up the size of our prototype, so we don't need to do anything inside of the viewport. But we do need to start filling in some of these other boxes, the boxes effectively highlighted in red. Okay, so in the title field, I'm just going to add the title of my task. So it's going to be task 1, download a video. And again, I'm just going to come over to my pre-prepared text to grab my scenario. And I'm going to paste that in there. Okay, so let's talk about how you need to structure your prototype. To use the single task block, you're required to use ProtoPie scenes. So this is an important consideration, something you'll need to be aware of before you set up your test. And the reason for this is that the single task block needs to have defined a starting screen and a task completion screen. And the screens that it uses for this are ProtoPie scenes. So by default, Useberry sets the beginning screen to the first scene, but you can just tap into this and you could change it if you wanted to. You can see I can see all of the scenes I've got in my prototype here. So I'm just going to leave it as the home scene, the default screen. But as I said, we are required to set an end screen. So I'm just going to tap the task completion button here. And there's two ways I can define the end of the user journey. I can make users step through a specific path, or I can just tell them, just basically set up the test so it ends on a specific screen. So I'm going to choose the second option. And the screen I'm going to end the task on is the video page screen. So I'm just going to select that. And I'm going to tap Save Completion. Okay, so the way single tasks work is that as soon as the ending screen is reached, the test jumps to the next block. So rather than just going straight to the thank you screen, I'm going to add a question block and use the opportunity to ask the participant a question. So to do that, I'm just going to come over to my left-hand column here where we have all of our blocks, and I'm just going to tap the plus button below single task this time. And I'm just going to choose a question block. Okay, I'm going to select the question block. I'm going to add a question. And there are lots of different types of question types I can add. I've got multiple choice, opinion scale, short text, and Likert scale. I have no idea what that is. I'm going to choose the opinion scale just for the sake of this example. And again, it's going to go to my pre-prepared text and just choose my question here. Save you watching me type in a load of text. So how confident are you that this is the correct screen to download a video from? And because it's a scale, I've got a scale start and a scale end here. I'm just going to change these labels. I'm going to set this to not too confident. And I'm going to set the end scale to very confident. And I'm also going to just turn on this extra switch to make sure that the question is required so that the user has to answer the question. Okay, so this completes our test setup. So when we run our test, each block will execute in turn as we have laid it out in this left-hand rail here. Okay, so what we can do is we can preview this test before we send it out into the big wide world and get real people to test it. To do that, we're just going to hit the preview button here. That's going to open up a new tab, and now we've got a preview of our test. So I'm going to hit Get Started. Here we get our initial instructions. It all looks good. I'm going to continue. Now it's going to load my prototype. And you can see here, because we're running a preview, it's telling us that this preview is a preview of our test, so it's not going to collect any data. Okay, so here we are in our test. We've got our first task and our first task instructions. Okay, download a video. Okay, got that. And what we can do now is we can navigate around our prototype quite freely here. Obviously, we're looking for that screen. So where do we go to download a video? So I think maybe it will be inside here. I should be able to just tap on this image here. And you can see as soon as we hit that screen, that was the screen that we set as our completion screen, that is the end of the task, and it's moved us on to the questions block. Okay, so we've got our question here. How confident are you that this is the correct screen to download the video from? I think I was fairly confident that that was the right screen. I should hope so. I designed it. Okay, so I'm going to choose 5, and I'm just going to hit the continue button here, and then we get passed to the final block, which is the thank you block. Okay, so as you can see, the single task is a great option to use if you have just one specific thing that you want to see if the user can find. So it's really good for checking navigation pathways. And obviously you have to be happy to be using ProtoPie scenes in terms of how you structure your prototype. But if those two things are okay, then a single task is a good test to try. Okay, in this section, we're going to look at how we can use the multiple task block. So for my streaming app, I want the user to perform 2 tasks. The first one will be the same as the single task that we did to see if the participant knows where to go to download the video. The second task, however, will be to ask the participant if they know where to find the video once it has downloaded. The challenge we have with using ProtoPie with the multiple task block is that the PI file gets reloaded after each task. This, of course, will reset the PI file and the first task progress will be lost. To overcome this, I've built a new prototype, and within this prototype, I've built the 2 tasks and the progression into the PI file itself. So first off, let's set up our blocks. So I'm going to come over to the left-hand rail here, and I'm just going to hit the plus button and look for a multiple task block. There we go. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to add my prototype. So I've already loaded up this extra prototype to save you having to go and watch me do that all over again. So I'm just going to choose this multiple task test prototype. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. Okay, so this is just going to load up over here. Cool, so you can now see I've got this first scene in my prototype, which has got these 2 buttons, task 1 and task 2. So that's all been built inside of ProtoPie, right? Okay, so I'm now going to set up my task. So this is where we set up our multiple tasks. And I'm going to go over to my single task just to grab the text that I had previously. Just going to open this one up. Paste that in. Paste in my instructions. Okay. And for the starting screen, it's going to be still using this first scene. So the one where we've got these 2 buttons. And what I'm actually going to do here is just going to add some extra instruction here. Just this line. So to give the user the idea they have to tap task 1, the task 1 button. And then I'm going to come into task completion here. Select on a specific screen. And again, I'm going to choose my video page as we did previously and save completion. Okay, so that's my first task. I'm now going to add a second task. So this is task 2. And I'm going to come over to my text. And I'm going to scroll down and get my second task text here. Okay, so again, we're going to start with the menu because I'm asking the participant to tap task 2, but the completion task, which we're going to again choose a specific screen, and this time we're going to choose the downloads page. And we're going to click save completion. Okay, so let's hit preview, and actually before we do that, let's just remove this single task block. We don't want this to run, so I'm just going to delete that completely. Cool. Okay, so let's go to preview. And we're going to run through this test. So I get my instructions as before. My prototype is going to load. Okay, so I get the first task. So I'm going to hit task 1 here. And I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to find my first screen. Okay, so you can see that the multitask block has now given me an ending message. So congratulations, task 1 completed successfully. So let's move on to the next task. So I'll tap the next task button. Okay, so this is the point where it's reloading the prototype. So obviously, if I didn't have this mechanic within the prototype to save the journey that the user has already taken, then that would be lost. Okay, so I've got my second task here, which I can execute. So where would I go to watch a video that has already been recently downloaded? So I'm going to tap task 2. Okay, got it. Let's tap task 2. And let's think about where we need to go. So I'm going to try down here. And we can see that I saw that the video was there. The dropping a pin on the map video that I downloaded previously is there. And again, I've been shuffled off into the next block into my question. Okay, so let's answer the question like before. Very confident, continue, and my test has been done. Okay, so that sort of works. But what if I want to test the participant actually downloading the video and then going to find it after it has downloaded in one continuous prototype? ProtoPie prototypes tend to have very rich, realistic interactions, and I want to be able to test these as well. For this, we need to use the Open Analytics block. So let's look at that next. Open Analytics is perfect for situations where you're not using screens to represent every interaction point. This is common in ProtoPie because of the way ProtoPie works. Unlike tools such as Figma or Principle that work by making changes between frames, ProtoPie is logic-based. It uses triggers and responses to create interactions, and it's common for prototypes to be created within a single scene. Open Analytics allows participants to move freely within a prototype, interacting with whatever they wish. Okay, so this time around, we'll ask the participant to download a video and then navigate to where they think it has downloaded. So I'm going to come over to my blocks again, and just below the context screen, I'm just going to add a new block, and I'm going to find the Open Analytics block. Okay, I'm going to tap on the block, and I'm going to add my prototype. I'm just going to be using the prototype that we used for the single task earlier. Okay, so I'm just going to add my instructions in here. So where would you go to watch a video that you have recently downloaded? And you can see here that similar to the other blocks, we still need to define a starting screen. Useberry by default chooses the first scene in the ProtoPie prototype. Next up, we need to switch on this extras because we want to redefine this button. So basically, the way the Open Analytics test is going to run is the user is going to be allowed to freely move around. And it's up to the user to tell us when they think they've finished the test. Okay, so I'm just going to change this to task completed. Okay, and that's all we need to do for this very simple test. Okay, so we're going to come over to preview. Our test is going to start. We'll get our general instructions as we did before. Okay, so our prototype has loaded and we've got our instructions here. Okay, got it. So this time we can come into our fully interactive prototype and we can come to our screen, we can hit the download button and we can now actually see an animation of the video downloading. And this is a persistent animation. The user could come out, have a look around still. We can see here on the download screen that nothing's downloaded yet. We can go back into our video here and we see that it just downloaded. So now it's completed. So where did it go to? So we know where it's gone to, obviously, but we can just navigate now back out of our prototype, the detail screen, come over to our download section, and we can see that our video has indeed downloaded. So it's a fully interactive prototype and really simulates a realistic scenario of how something would actually work. Okay, so this brings us to the end of looking at the different blocks that you can use with ProtoPie and Useberry. Overall, I like this first integration between these two tools, and it definitely makes it easier to test prototypes remotely and get quality data back. I'd recommend that you set up a free trial account and give ProtoPie and Useberry a go. In the next video on Useberry, I'll be showing you the actual data and insights that you get from usability tests and the different tools that Useberry gives you to analyze user behavior. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this video, and I'll see you next time.